Hello and welcome to the Human Echoes recap for Game of Thrones Season 6, Episode 7. Clegane Bowl 2016 confirmed, get hype!
The Broken Man.
Yeah, I mean, that's the real title for boring people.
Yeah, but it's full on, like, all of this is just hype, cold opening, confirmation Clegane is still alive, hype.
That was such a great open too, by the way. I was so pumped because I saw it coming, right? Like, at first I was like, I don't know what this is. Is this in the past? Like, why are we doing a cold open? What's up with that? And then you see, like, the guys walk by carrying the log. And you, like, have 4 guys carrying 1 log.
It's all nice
and then you see
pretty.
the other 4 guys carrying the log. And I was like, somebody's going to come by. And it's going to be one dude carrying a log. And it's going to be the Hound. I just know it. And then and then they made us wait, right? Like, I knew it was happening. I was like, he's coming. And then he was there. And I was like, oh, I was right. I knew it.
Yeah, they took
So awesome.
They took a little bit of time with that, and you're just sitting there like, wow, like, he found a really nice place. I like this.
Everybody's happy. Everybody's getting along together. They're not like weirdo, like trying to take over the world, faith militant. They're just, they're serving the 7, building their little church out in the middle of nowhere. They're church in the wildwood.
Not to mention one of my favorite actors of all time just shows up to be the priest, or his name is Ray according to the credits, but I don't think we ever actually heard him say his name.
Ray sounds like a terribly un-Game of Thrones name.
Yeah. He's not actually listed on the IMDb page. The only way I picked that up was from the commentary afterwards with the creators.
I did not pick up the specific name, although I did watch that. But he was a good character. He's from Deadwood, right?
Yep, Deadwood and several other movies. And because of Deadwood, he's just one of my favorites ever.
That was a weird thing for me because Game of Thrones has been going on for so long, and because there have been so many characters, I recognized him and I was thinking, has he been on before? Am I supposed to know who this is? I feel stupid. But then after a while, I realized, no, he's just a character that's been around on other stuff that I've seen.
He's the Hound's new spiritual advisor.
Yeah, and things aren't going to go well for him going forward. But let's not get into that right away. Other than introducing the Hound, there's not much else that happens in that scene. Although I did really like that montage, like sort of leading up into that of, how they're building stuff with wood pegs and.
Yeah, it's kind of like an old school barn raising. I couldn't tell what they were building. It looked like a guard tower, but I'm sure it was something else.
I just assumed it was going to be like a temple of some kind. Just sort of a temple out in the wilderness with, less cool stuff than they had in King's Landing.
Yeah. Especially because that guy was all about the 7.
Right. Well, he does say later on, or maybe it's at this point, where he talks about, like, hey, I don't know exactly which gods are which. He talks to the Hound. He says, something has a purpose for you. I'm serving the 7 here. Maybe it's all about the old gods. Maybe it's about the, Lord of Light. Maybe they're all the same thing. You're kind of tipping at a nod a little bit to some of those theories that have been around, that they're all sort of manifestations of the same idea, the same spirit force. But, again, nothing concrete, just sort of putting that out there.
Yeah.
Then we move forward to Marjorie in the steppe talking to the High Sparrow, and the High Sparrow kind of drops some low-key threats. This guy is
well, he's like, I heard you haven't been to bed with Tommen since you got back. We need an heir. It's like one of the first times where, like, the High Sparrow's getting kind of creepy with it, because usually he's pretty reasonable. He's pretty, like, well thought out with the things he's saying. This is like, hey, you should go fuck the king. Not like the Hound would.
But it's a political move from his perspective, right? He's like, we need to carry on our power. Like, it's going to come through you. That this, if you have a child, we've sort of cemented our power. Whereas if you don't, then we don't get to keep this nice little coup that we've got going with King Tommen converting to the church. So
it's as much the High Sparrow's dynasty as their dynasty.
Exactly. And on top of that, he also threatens her mother in a very sort of not subtle way, which I was a little bit bugged by, to be honest with you, because I don't know if I've been on his side this whole time. I'm not saying, like, oh, I love the High Sparrow, but he seemed very genuine, and this is the first, like, really manipulative thing that he's done, in my mind, that doesn't feel like it has any other purpose other than just yep, we need more power.
You're trying to get somebody to like turn Snake a little bit so you're not always on the High Sparrow side, maybe. I don't know. It does feel like a little out of character for him to just all of a sudden make that switch.
Well, I don't know if out of character. I mean, we've talked about this practically every episode of this recap. Is how sincere is he? He seems sincere. He seems really sincere. It's hard to believe that it would be all an act.
Yeah.
But when are we gonna see? Are we gonna see that he has another side? Are we gonna see that he's hypocritical? Is he just trying to do the right thing for the faith, and it just turns out to be a really sort of slimy thing?
I'll tell you one person who's not sincere, and that's Marjorie.
She is not, because we see her go to her mom, and that was, I just got to say, I turned to my wife during that scene, and I was like, this scene is amazingly acted on the part of the actress that plays Marjorie. Just incredible. Her delivery of that with her like in the room with the other sort of
it's like a nun basically,
essentially.
I can't remember exactly what their title is,
and she's
Septa
talking to her mom.
Onella is her name,
and she has that, she's saying you should maybe leave King's Landing, and her mom's like, I'm not leaving King's Landing, and she's like just breaks out of her beatific a smile enough, like not to alert a little bit alerts the suspicions of the other lady, cutting back and forth, but she's like, you need to leave King's Landing. But not like that. Not like in a really, just enough where you know she's serious, and you know she's sort of like signaling her mom with the old like, I'm not playing around here.
And she gives,
go away.
She gives her a drawing of the rose showing that she's still loyal to her house. Which I actually kind of dig their crown too. Like their crown is like the thorny roses wrapped in the stag horns. Like, I don't know if you noticed that.
Cool.
It's a cool little set piece.
There's a lot of great set design, or not just set design, but production design in this. And she basically convinces her, although we don't get the payoff for that quite in the next scene. And I got in trouble with myself almost skipping scenes. So we're going through this in chronological order, Tony. This time, we're not missing anything, because next up is the Wildlings and Jon. And I like that. Everybody was complaining this was a shorter episode. I don't know. I felt like this was perfect for me. I was perfectly happy with everything that happened. I wasn't sitting there like, what? Man, I needed 10 more minutes. But
I could have used like 5 for just a few little things, because I want to know what happens with Arya, and I want to know what happens with stuff that's going on later.
If you got 5 more minutes of that Arya storyline in this episode, she would be dead.
Probably.
Okay, that's how that works.
I also thought that I've heard a lot of cool things about things that happened in the book with the Blackfish and Jaime, and I was kind of hoping they would go with that, but it looks like that's going to happen in the next episode anyway. But let's keep this in order. We are at the Wildlings, up at a camp with Jon Snow.
Yeah, and it's not the slam dunk that Jon Snow kind of thought and hoped it would be, right? You know, he has what's the guy, big beard man, Tormund, yes. He has him on his side, and he's arguing for him. But the other guys are like, "Listen, we signed on because we wanted to fight the White Walkers. That was the deal. And they have a point, right? It's like, we don't want to get involved in your stupid inter-family squabbles. We respect you and all that. And that's great, but that's not why we're here." And they have to make the point that, okay, yeah, but also that's part of it, right? Because if the North is divided, we need all these people united together to fight the White Walkers, because just us or, all these houses fractured apart are not going to be able to hold them off.
Yeah. And basically, Tormund is having to be up there and be like, hey, this guy is Jesus. We need to follow him. He died for your sins. His friends killed him. He's got long hair, a slight beard, and great abs. He's Jesus.
I don't know about the abs thing or the long hair.
I'm just saying.
Well, can you clear something up for me? Because I was a little confused. Is 1-1 going with them or not?
1-1 is a huge Snow acolyte, so I'm thinking he wants to go with them.
You just walked off screen,
and
I was like,
Snow, and then walked away.
Is he talking about how the weather looks all the time in the North, or
I'm pretty sure 1-1's on his side from some things I was reading. So I was a little confused as well, but from everything I gather, 1-1 is one of Jon's biggest fans.
I thought that might be the case, but it was not clear. And then I didn't see him in the camp later which I understand he's in a special effect and that costs money, but I didn't notice him like in the background or anything when they were walking around later, so I wasn't sure if he went with them or it was just not clear. I know he doesn't talk good English, but it would have been nice to get some more clarification.
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll see more with that soon, but it seems like the wildlings are united despite their misgivings about the whole situation. Yes. Then we move on to Cersei and Olenna Tyrell,
who are not united despite the whole situation, which I like because Cersei makes a good point to Olenna. She's like, we should fight together against these people. Olenna goes right back. She's like, you made this mess and you can sweep it up by yourself, lady.
And she's like, I forget with old age, but you might be the worst person I've ever known.
Oh, she doesn't even more digging than that. Olenna has such, she says, I wonder if you're the worst person I've ever known. She's like, I've forgotten a lot of people, but it's entirely if recent memory serves, you're the worst.
It's like she knew the Mad King. She's known a lot of bad people.
And it's also great to see her just and she literally says to Cersei basically, I might get screwed by this decision, but I am going to see you go down first, and it's worth it. And that's kind of how I feel. I'm glad the people are calling Cersei on her BS and saying like, no, we're not. You don't get to maneuver your way out of this one.
Yeah,
you're gonna finally get hung by your own noose that you made.
And there's been a lot of talk recently about the prophecy that was made by Maggie the Frog back in the day, like the one that actually predicted her kids dying. And a lot of people don't know that there's also a small line in there about the Valancourt that would kill her, which means little brother, and we're still trying to figure out if that's going to be Jaime, if that's going to be Tyrion. Like, how's all that going to go down?
Oh, that's a good question. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, they kind of disguised it behind a word that nobody knows.
Well, I mean, we do have Googles, Tony, so we were able to look it up, obviously.
Well, yeah. Much smarter and more thorough people than me have gone deeper, and I've just been trying to keep up with them.
Well, so here's another little brother who is going to come and fight is the Hound. It might not be her little brother.
That's very true.
That's the first thing that came to my mind, Tony, and I realized that it's...
That actually makes a lot of sense, like that, especially if it's in the trial for combat and he can take out Zombie Mountain, then he would, in essence, be killing her, and it would be the little brother.
Yeah. I'm smart, Tony. Look at that. Smart Albert has an idea. And I mean, we talked about this last episode, and this seems to be the season in general where they're just giving everybody what they want.
Yeah.
I mean, the fans. Not
the
characters.
There's not a lot of subtlety so far this season. Like, the ideas that we'd had behind... Clegane still being alive was him being like the grave digger where Brienne just sees him on an island and all this other stuff. And this, they're just like, nope, he's right here. We're not hiding him. Like, although they kept that secret a lot better than they did with Jon.
Well, Jon was a bigger deal. I mean, we saw Jon die, and I don't know. I think it's, for one thing, these guys are off just in some woods shooting somewhere, right?
Yeah.
So they don't. Like, Jon has to be on that set that everybody already knows is the North and the Wall, and so from a production point of view, it's harder to hide his...
Yeah, I remember the shaky cell phone camera images that came out about halfway through filming.
Which, whatever. I mean, I knew he was going to come back anyway, but regardless of whether you spoil it, it's still, in the context of the show, has been some really good reveals.
Yeah.
And, yeah, it's to see him like this, I forgot where I was going with that thought. Tony.
We were in the Cersei and Olenna scene, and we went off on another, little side quest there.
Well, basically, I'm saying they're confirming a lot of fan theories. They're confirming, the Hound is still alive. They confirm, obviously, Jon's still alive.
Cold hands.
They're leaning really hard towards the Jon Snow's heritage being as it has been suspected in the books, and I mean, at this point, I'm really heavily suspecting we're going to see Lady Stoneheart.
Yeah. And
for those of you who know who that is, great. If you don't, then we'll try not to spoil it for you.
The creators claimed that wasn't going to be a part of the show. I think it's leaning that direction. I think we need to institute that the last 5 minutes are where we speculate wildly so people can turn it off, so we don't spoil anything in that particular regard.
I'm not going into specifics. We'll move on to the next scene, which is Jaime and Bronn at River Run trying to face down the Blackfish. Just a great little dialogue scene here. Not a whole lot going on, except that they set up that these guys are not great at their job.
The Freys are so inept at their siege. It's like the saddest little siege ever. I'm kind of surprised the Tullys and the Brothers Without Banners didn't just go out and kill the Freys, in all honesty.
It's still... I think they probably still outnumber them. It's an interesting dynamic. Also, I think they could send more. You can keep killing them, but he doesn't have the flexibility to go anywhere. Even if he does kill them, what's he going to do? He doesn't have really an army. He can just hold this one castle and be a thorn in the side of the Freys, and that's what he's going to do.
Yeah, and because they've been preparing for winter, they've got 2 years of food stored up, so it's going to be a long siege if anybody decides to do that.
And somebody pointed out that River Run, the trees on the leaves on the trees were gone, as an indication that winter is in fact coming.
Yeah.
Although they don't. I'm glad that they don't hit that nail too hard on the head, but nobody's like, I would like to see like somebody saying, oh, it's a little chilly or shivering or putting on more coats as, further south. And we don't see that too much, but
speaking of like new coats and stuff, I really dig on the new armor that Jaime's got. Like,
it's pretty good.
I think it's just actually seeing him in the full Lannister colors instead of the old Kingsguard stuff. It's just a little bit of a different look, and as someone who's always liked seeing like badass old armor in shows, it's just cool to see some new stuff. Even Jon's new getup looks a little bit better.
Yeah, he has that new coat, and Sansa has a nice coat with him, and they're all like pimping North people. Bronn has some really good scenes, or really good lines in this scene, which I liked. He's just sort of like gotten tired of the whole deal, which somebody pointed out. It's like everything he's gone through is because some Lannister said to him at one point, Lannister always pays his debts, and he thought that sounded pretty good.
It's like, don't even say it.
He's just, I don't, of all the people that I want to see survive, or maybe not that I really want to see survive, but that I don't want to see die, Bronn is way up on my list. Not because he's like my favorite character, but just because he really wouldn't have been involved in this at all if it hadn't been for, Tyrion coming along that one time and be like...
Well, it's like he and Tyrion got along because they're both smartasses. And like it just turned into this whole thing where he'd be like the sellsword for the Lannister house, and now he's an anointed knight.
Yeah, it just doesn't seem like... It's not his fault.
Yeah.
It is his fault. I mean, he's not a good guy, but...
It's kind of like Davos.
Davos
gets dragged into a lot of things that are completely out of his control, and it's just because he's so good at what he does.
Right, which leads us into the next scene, Tony. Very well done. Let's all take a moment to congratulate you on that amazing transition, which I'm ruining.
I have
here.
the segues.
The next scene, by the way, might be my favorite in the episode, just because of how unexpected it was.
Well, I didn't realize that they'd actually planted a seed for this last season, where we get to meet Lyanna Mormont, the little 10-year-old badass who has taken over Bear Island.
She's so great. She's like... She's not taking any of their crap. Like, she's taking advice from her maester, but she's also making her own decisions, and like, she definitely, after all of the annoying non-committal children we've seen that can't do anything, especially as rulers, right? We have what's-his-face
Robin.
up at the Eyrie. Yeah, and then Tommen, and just how annoying and weaselly he is. It's finally nice to see a kid who's, like, not taking it.
Yeah, like she's straight up what you would expect a Northerner to be.
And it's not a huge scene, but it is sort of this is the first place they go. They're facing off against a 10-year-old, and they almost don't get her help, and the help they do get is like 60 people.
Yeah, they're not having a whole lot of luck raising armies. They get 62 out of this scene after almost not even being able to get that because this girl is so shrewd and wondering why she should even consider it. In the end, they have to drop the whole, like, the wars with the undead, we're going to have to unite, and Rickon Stark is still being held. He's still alive. An actual Stark is there.
Yeah, and she does. Interestingly enough, she doesn't bend to Jon's request, and it's not Sansa. It's Davos himself who comes forward and says, "Listen, I know how you feel. You're 10 years old. You don't want to be here. You didn't know you're going to be a ruler. You'd rather be playing around. I was the son of a crab boiler or whatever, and now look where I am. I certainly didn't know that I was going to be a knight and also talking to one of the ladies of a powerful house trying to raise an army, but listen, the dead people are coming, and we are the living, and we need to fight them. It's a good scene.
Yeah, it was very effective.
They move back to the siege at River Run. Jaime talks to the Blackfish, and there's not much here except, he says, hey, listen, you want to give up, and, we'll spare y'all. It'll be cool. And the Blackfish is like, nah, not doing that.
Yeah.
Kill my son if you have to. Or is it his nephew?
His nephew.
Okay.
Which you really don't get that he has a lot of love for Edmure anyway. He looks like he's old and tired and just like, you know what? I'm keeping this castle. I don't really care if this guy that still ended up marrying a Frey is going to last or not.
I don't think he's that callous. I think he probably would rather not see him die, but we kind of glossed over, but in the previous scene where they show up, like the Freys are threatening to kill him and threatening to kill him, threatening to kill him. Jaime goes up to him. He's like, dude, this is not, no, you kill the people that you threaten to kill or not. Don't make threats you're not planning to keep.
Yeah, he's like, say I tell you that I'm going to hit you if you keep on talking, and then he starts talking and he backhands him.
So I think some of this might be the Blackfish actually knowing, hey, that these guys aren't going to kill him.
Yeah, it's their only bargaining chip, really.
This is their only chip. If they don't want to sit here for 2 years waiting for us to run out of food, they're not going to kill him. And they don't. But if Jaime says he's going to kill him, he might go a little differently.
Yeah.
I don't know, but he certainly doesn't respect him. Jaime doesn't win him over by any stretch of the imagination. And I think Jaime was really trying to have some sense here. He says, listen, we're going to win one way or the other. I mean, I'm going to lose a bunch of guys and you're going to lose a bunch of guys, but we don't have to lose anybody. You could just give up and it'd be okay. There's no more war. What are you fighting for? And Blackfish isn't going to have any of it.
Yeah, he says as long as he's drawing breath, the war is still on. And rightfully so. I mean, he had a pretty good chunk of his entire family killed at the Red Wedding. It's not like he's got much to stay around for. He's got a lot of vengeance to take.
Yeah, but is he really taking that much vengeance just by sitting at this castle? And I mean, it's probably an important strategic point, but
yeah, it's hard to say with that.
He's just being annoying.
Yeah,
really. He's not. It's not like everybody's like, oh my goodness, what are we gonna do about the Blackfish? It's like, fine, go deal with the Blackfish. I'm not dissing the guy. I'm just saying I don't see this as like this great grand, strategic moment where he's changing everything. He's just there.
Yeah, it's wasting a lot of Lannister resources and time is what it comes down to.
Which is fine. I mean, that's what a siege is about. But I don't know that it's going to change that much. Although having seen the sort of next time on bit, it definitely puts some interesting stuff up with Jaime and some other characters that are going to come back. But I think that's all for that scene. Moving on to the north again. Sansa and Jon go to a different house, and this time they get nowhere.
Yeah, this is with House Glover. And House Glover does not respond at all well to this. Like, they come in there, and they're like, you promised to be loyal to the Starks, and he just straight up says, House Stark is dead.
Although I did like Sansa's sort of ballsy move here, where she comes in and she's like, Jon's sort of like, oh, okay, and she's like, hey, dude, what? No, you promised. And then he comes down, but I like that she got her moment there to really shine and shout out like, you're kind of a douchebag.
Yeah. She's gotten so much better this season. She's just so much better to watch, so much better to listen to. Like, she's getting a lot of real strength. Reminds me so much of Catelyn. Like, even just the way she carries herself now is, like, modeled off of that.
I also think it's interesting. He talks about how it was the Ironborn that had killed a bunch of their people. And we're going to see the Ironborn in the next scene. And Game of Thrones is so fascinating because, on the one hand, you really feel his pain at, man, these guys killed a bunch of my family and, took a bunch of stuff away from me and you didn't stop them, and that's terrible. And then in the next scene, we're going to be with the Ironborn, like hanging out, trying to work out their issues between themselves.
Yeah, it goes back to the episode title of A Broken Man, which there's a lot of broken men in this show. Like, you could argue that the broken man is Theon. You could argue that it's the Hound. You could argue that it's Jaime in a lot of ways. Like, almost every main man on this show is a broken man at this point. But, like, the time that it's actually uttered is when Yara is talking with Theon and basically trying to get him to be himself again instead of being Reek. She basically tells him, like, if you're not going to be Theon, just go and kill yourself.
She does. And his whole deal in that scene is so great, where he's just like looking at everybody else having a great time with the prostitutes. Yeah. And he's like, I can't have a great time with the prostitutes because I don't have a penis anymore.
Yeah, even his sister's getting down with
I'm
the
mocking, but that's a sucky time to have.
Yeah. His sister is down for the girls. It's a good scene.
It was an interesting scene. There's not much there. It's just kind of like, all right, you got drunk, you're back, that's good. All right, going off to have sex now.
Yeah. And it's interesting that this season has been, like, they still have nude moments and everything, but it seems like it's a lot less overt, like, showing sex and things like that. This is one of the first scenes where you're actually in a brothel and there's kind of gratuitous nudity happening. You got a little bit of it with Danny whenever everything burns down. You got a little bit with John on the table. But this is, like, one of the first overtly sexual scenes that have happened this season. This would usually be, like, 4th or 5th or 6th by now.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, I feel like they toned it down a little bit because they've got a lot of other things to cover.
They have an actual story. They don't need to hook people in now. They don't need to be like, guys, you actually want to find out what happens now, so we don't have to show you, but we will occasionally.
Yeah, just a little glimpse, like, you know, just keep the flavor there.
We finish out in the north again with not finishing up the episode, but this is the last scene in the north where Jon's army is camping where Stannis' army camped, and a lot of interesting stuff happening here. Sansa sends a message to, I assume, Littlefinger.
That was who I was guessing as well. Although in the next preview it shows Brienne holding a message. I don't think it was going to her. I think it was going to Littlefinger. She needs the Knights of the Vale. She needs the armies that Littlefinger can bring, and he's still in the north, so that should be able to come pretty quickly. Otherwise, they're only going to have about 2,500 fighting men up against 5,000 in a keep that could actually be very easily defended. It's a very hard fight to win.
Right, and not only just because they don't have as many people, but they're divided. You know, the wildlings and the northerners are fighting with each other. They're all at each other's throats, literally, with knives and swords and stuff. And you know, Jon is busting them up, and it was really cool to see, by the way, that Lyanna Mormont came with her 62 guys.
Yeah.
Like, she didn't stay in the Bear Island. She's like, all right, I'm going to the 10-year-old girl on the front lines with her maester and her 62 guys that fight as good as 10 men. That, speaking of characters that better not die, if she falls into Ramsay's hand, I
would have a severe problem with that, unless she's the one to kill Ramsay.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of loss of innocence on this show, but no, that would not be okay.
Yeah.
I'm glad she's there. I'm glad she's sort of like there to provide her.
I hope she lives
relief.
And then like marries Rickon or something and unites those houses. I mean, she is named after Lyanna Stark, so it would make sense.
I guess Rickon is probably still alive.
Probably.
We haven't actually confirmed that. Like, he killed Shaggy Dog,
and he killed
not right Rickon, but
they killed off the
lady who
from
was
Harry
helping
Potter.
him out.
Asha.
Yes,
that's her name.
Asha. Thank you.
Sorry about that.
Good on the names,
yes.
Tony, because I'm terrible. I was looking at a scene with Theon Greyjoy, and I wrote down Reek, and I went to my wife. I was like, "What is that guy's name?" I don't I know.
I'm usually pretty good about that sort of thing for this, but as far as that scene goes, like, it's basically just showing that there's a lot of complications happening here, and without Littlefinger's help, they probably will not be able to take Winterfell.
We then get a final. Well, it's not the final scene, but I'll smush these two last scenes into one, Tony, because it's really all one story, where the Hound is there with his happy band of churchgoers building their little church in the Wildwood, and some people come up who we don't like. I saw some speculation that these guys are from the Brotherhood Without Banners.
That's what the Hound says. He says they're part of the Brotherhood. So, Brotherhood without banners, most likely.
Which Yeah,
sometimes they're paired as the good guys. Sometimes they're just raiders.
We'll see. We'll talk about it in the predictions at the end of the episode. These guys showing up ties in with some stuff I'm hoping to see. But they kind of just sort of drop some vaguely threatening hints. Ray says, "Listen, we're not gonna go fight him because I'm sick of fighting." And he has a great dialogue before that where he's talking about all the bad stuff he did.
Yeah, he talks about being a soldier for a long time before and how it's never too late to just stop, like to come back to real life.
It's never. He looks at the Hound too, and I wrote down the quote because the way he said it was so powerful to me, and also really applies particularly to the Hound, both in his emotional and physical state. He says it's never too late to come back, and I mean he's going to come back and fight his brother, and that's what it's all about, my friends. That's what it's all about. You put your right foot in, you put your right foot out, and then the Hound and the might and fight.
Close enough.
Yes.
It's this is literally the biggest one-on-one combat that we've seen. It's something they've built up since season 1. And other than a couple other fights with Brienne and the Hound, I'm trying to think of other bigger one-on-one fights that have happened, and this might literally be the biggest one. It's so awesome.
I mean, the one between the Mountain and the Serpent was great.
It was great.
But that was only built up over one season. And while it's great to see the Mountain fight anybody, anyway, this is still in the future. That's still speculation entirely. It may not happen, Tony. I think it will. I think this is the season of fan service. Not fan service in a bad way, but sort of like, hey, you've stuck with us for this long. You've speculated about this stuff. It actually is going to happen. I think that's what's going on this season. But, they come back and they kill all of those people.
Yeah.
All of them.
That was the only little jump that I kind of had a problem with, because he's just out there chopping wood. It seems like he would have heard something. But whenever he walks back to camp, it's just like bodies strewn with arrows, people with axes in them, and Ray's character hanging from what was probably going to be his church in the wild.
And that's rough. I mean, I know it's Game of Thrones, but these people didn't do nothing. And they're getting. Well, I mean, I said Ray obviously did something. Everybody has done something, but in the context of the show, they were just out there trying to make their own way. They were not bothering anybody at all, and they get wrecked by these guys. And this is the knife goading the Hound to go forward. Although honestly, when those guys first rode up, I thought it was going to be the church from. That they were literally going to send for the Hound from
that's kind of what I was
King's
thinking
Landing.
Too. They had heard that this sept had the Hound and they wanted to bring him back, but it turned out to be a little bit different. It still might have been church representatives, but I don't think it was.
No, I think you're probably right. That he says it was the Brotherhood Without Banners.
Yeah.
And I don't think he would be wrong. He's not the kind of guy who says that kind of thing and is just guessing.
Yeah, I also have been thinking back to whenever he killed the pig farmer and took their silver, about how he said these are innocent people, they're not going to make it through the winter, we shouldn't care about them. And then all of a sudden he's among people like that again, and it gets taken from him, and now he's the one that's kind of wielding the axe for those people.
Oh, that's a good point. I'd forgotten. Now that you bring it up, I remember that scene, but that's a really good point, that he, at one point, was the pragmatist who was saying, hey, they're going to die anyway, so might as well be us. Oh, wow.
Yeah, his redemption story is getting deeper and deeper. It's really fun to watch right now.
It's so amazing to have all these characters in this show that can be so deeply flawed and to be the bad guy at various points and yet also be the good guy. I mean, what's his name?
Jamie?
Theon.
Okay.
Well, Jamie to a certain extent, but Theon in particular has gone went so far dark, and now again, like I said, you get back to this point in the season where you actually, and I mentioned it wasn't a very big scene, but the actor who plays him did a really good job at sort of showing us that turn where he's like, all right, yeah, I am gonna buckle down and toughen up and be who I'm supposed to be.
Yeah, and he knows how far he's gone too, because she's like, we'll get justice, and he's like, if there was justice, I'd be burning on a wall in Winterfell.
Then we'll get revenge.
Yeah.
The final thing we'll talk about, not the final scene, but it is sort of wraps it up for me, and also maybe the most important plot line for me at the moment. Arya at Braavos, trying to make her escape. She's, throwing around a lot of gold coins. Maybe not the best choice, Tony. If I was her, I would have stowed away.
Yeah, I think I would have stowed away and then dropped the money. I would have been like, hey, you might as well just take me. I'm already here, and it's gonna get you a bunch of silver and gold.
And I could probably kill you if I wanted to, because she's pretty good.
Yeah.
But she's not good enough to avoid the other girl from the House of the Many-Faced God, who
the waif.
I knew it was gonna happen. I saw that woman coming up, and I was like,
that woman's too short.
Her.
It's the waif.
Why are you not watching every single person? There's only one person right there. Look at her and assume no, she gets stabbed. I saw a lot of people. By the way, I want to calm everybody down. We saw Arya get stabbed, and she falls into the water, and yes, she's doing real bad. However, if they were going to kill her off, they wouldn't make us wait till next episode to do it, okay? I feel, as a person who has told some stories, I feel relatively confident that would be just a mistake. Like, that's not how you do that moment.
Yeah.
You kill somebody off, you do it at the end, you make it a big climax. You don't sort of, leave them alive for the whole week for everybody to come back and be like, is she still alive? And then be like, oh, no, she died.
Yeah, look back whenever everybody thought Tyrion might have died. They basically made you wait a week to see if he survived, but he did. She's one of the few people that I think, for the moment, has plot armor. Just because of how much has been invested in the character. To have her die in Braavos for no reason seems a little bit... just that it wouldn't fit in with the story.
Yeah, it wouldn't put us anywhere. It's not like it's going to change anything in the landscape of how the politics are. If she dies, and killing Rob off was like, okay, we've changed the landscape of the show. Killing her off would just be like someone who everybody thought was dead is actually dead now. It wouldn't do anything, and it would be pointless to have spent the last 5 seasons or whatever following her getting stronger and then not do anything with that.
Unless
Trust me,
they wanted to
survive.
Just really show you about the Many-Faced God and thought it was really cool. But that's not what's going on here.
Because it's really cool is never the right reason in the story. Well, usually not the right reason. That would not be really cool. That would be a waste.
If it's really cool, that deserves a couple scenes, not entire seasons worth of work. Yeah,
I do gotta sort of wag my finger at the waif for walking away after.
Yeah, that seems. She should have dove in the water and looked for her. And even if it is a gut wound, and that would really suck in those sorts of times, there's gonna be something she could do. It wasn't a confirmed kill yet. Didn't Jaqen ask for her face?
I think so. I want to say yes. Maybe she thought she could come back later in the, or maybe she doesn't like the water. Maybe she
does know how to swim.
She does. Oh, that would be hilarious. But I understand. It didn't bother me in the moment too much because she was underwater for a pretty long time, and those wounds did look pretty bad.
Yeah.
Except for the thing about the face, which I didn't remember that might be a thing until just now.
I might not be remembering it right, but I thought as she was leaving, he was and bring her face or something like that. But I might be imagining that.
Also, she had to pull the face off. I feel like that's. I mean, maybe it's just me, reading too much into something, and they were just being very clear, hey, yes, it's the waif. But in my mind, she had to gloat at Arya before, she finished her off. Hey, it was me, by the way.
Not some random angry granny.
I understand. They could have had her do it later, after Arya had fallen in the water and pulled the face thing off, and we see that it's her for the audience. But I was for the audience's sake, if somebody just random person just walks up and stabs Arya and walks away, talk about your useless storytelling. That's not even the person who wanted to kill her. It's just, but yeah, I think that I'm 98% sure she's not going to die in the next episode or the next couple episodes. She will, you build these things up to pay them off, and she's something you pay off. You pay off things like the Mountain. The Hound. The Hound is not going to just go off and kill these guys and then be cool and be done. There will be a climax. He may not make it out of the climax, but it's going to be a big moment when he gets to it.
Yeah. definitely. I think that actually covers everything for this episode, so now we're kind of moving into stuff we saw for the trailer for the next episode and some wild speculation. So if you don't want to hear about this sort of thing, go ahead and shut it down now. Thank you guys for listening, and we're going to move into this.
So, I think we get I'm thinking they're going to set up the battle, the sort of trial by combat in this next episode. I don't know that that's what we're going to get.
Oh, that seems like a very episode 9 sort of thing to do for Game of Thrones. They're always like, episode 8 last year was Hardhome, and that was one of the first times where episode 8 had all the major climactic stuff happening. But usually it's episode 9, and then episode 10 is kind of the fallout setting it up for next season.
Well, and you see Cersei say, I choose violence. I mean, her and the Mountain aren't going to take on the entire Sept.
Yeah.
That's just not going to happen.
But he could take on 5 guys that are coming to get her for her trial. Bringing it back to an old video.
I think that she's just... I believe that what's happening there is she's saying, like, we're going to have trial by combat. I'm not going peacefully, and I'm not going to take your nonsense. I will stand up for myself, and I have the Robert Strong. Come at me.
Yeah. And, like, there's a very quick flash of him grabbing somebody's face, and they're all wrapped in the chains that the High Sparrow's goons have. And it's going to be some fun little violence leading up to that. I'm kind of wondering if they're grabbing her to take her back to the keep for her trial or something like that, and she just wants to stay. I'm sure they'll spell it out for us there. We also see Brienne going to, or talking with Jaime, which is going to be exciting to see. And for some reason, she's bound by, like, to fight him if somebody doesn't surrender. I don't know if it's Jaime or if it, like, who needs to surrender. But it's an interesting idea that, like, she was so close to him, and now she's probably going to end up fighting him.
It was brought up in this episode. The Blackfish points out to him, is like, hey, you promised Lady, not Tully, or was it Tully? She used to be a Tully, the mom, Catelyn Stark, right? She says, you promised Catelyn Stark you were going to bring your daughters to me. Are you here to do that? And he's like, yeah, no. And you just kind of see that Jaime has failed at all of his oaths. And really, in a way, Brienne has failed in some of her oaths as well, although she did manage to keep Sansa safe. But
she's had a lot of people die on her watch, too, though.
It's not her fault.
Yeah.
I mean, but it is one of those things where it's interesting. I don't know exactly how that's going to play out, but it is cool to see them back together. There was a little bit of a romance between them, I think, back in season 3, or maybe even, was it 3?
I believe it was
back
3.
there a ways.
Yeah.
But you see Jaime saying, I am going back to my sister, to her, which I wonder how that's going to play out. I wonder if Brienne's going to be hurt a little bit, or if she's seen enough and sort of dealt with enough, or she'll just be like, whatever, dude. Go and, who cares about you at this point?
And is that directed?
Giant wildling guy.
Is that directed at Brienne, or is that directed at Tommen? Because Tommen basically said he's not going to be in that city anymore. He's going to, like, after he's done with the Riverlands, he's probably going to send Jaime back to Casterly Rock.
Which might not be such a bad... I mean, Casterly Rock doesn't have somebody to be the lord of it now.
Yeah, and since he's not Kingsguard anymore, he can have those titles in those lands.
So that might be a direction... That's sort of like longer term. I don't think that's going to happen this season, or, I mean, maybe it'll be sort of like at the, like, episode 10, kind of wrap up, like, oh yeah, and Jaime's over here, like, settling in. We've never seen Casterly Rock, have we?
Like, other than maybe a quick CGI thing, I don't think we have. And even then... There
was a flashback where we saw a young Cersei. Like, I mean, I assume she was around Casterly Rock at the time, but I don't think we actually saw the castle when she goes to see the fortune teller, the witch.
Yeah. I don't think we've actually seen that yet. We've heard it mentioned quite a few times, but it's never been featured on the show.
And there's that one scene with the person who has a haircut that looks awful lot like Arya doing the jump out the window. If it's Arya, she, again, I'm going to say probably did okay getting back from her gut wound.
Yeah.
That was a nice little jump she's doing.
I mean, I imagine that would be pretty rough.
I assume that she's going to... I almost assumed she was going to bump into somebody. By the way, how Bravos is full of a bunch of dicks. She's like walking around and everybody's like, well, she's probably dead.
Yeah. And she's like staring at the faces, trying to see if the waif is in the crowd, and everybody else is just kind of like sort of ignoring her. They'll like look at the gut wound and then look forward again.
Ugh, another person stabbed in the gut. Honey, keep moving.
I swear, these hobos just can't keep their innards inside them.
Bandage! You got bandage! Come on, help the guy out. I think what I was suspecting would happen in that scene was that she would run across somebody from the Lord of Light, one of their priestesses.
Yeah, I kind of thought that too. I don't know how big they are in Bravos right now, but I assume they've got some sort of priestess there.
Listen, they've got franchises everywhere, okay? Come into your local Lord of Light today with a free coupon.
It's the fastest growing religion, man. It's the new hype.
It is the new hype. And also we get back to Marine with Tyrion probably having Dany come back. You see him looking up at the ceiling of the pyramid or whatever. That's probably a dragon landing on the top. And
now it's the question of
coming on back.
Since she's kind of redetermined that she is the conqueror, is she just going to burn it all down?
No.
I think so.
I mean, she needs these people to... she needs her army. Plus, she's the mother of dragons. That is one of her titles. It's one of her weaknesses, but she is that nurturing figure. She does play into that sort of archetype that the seven, the people who worship the seven talk about with a mother.
Yeah, but she could also go burn down one of those other cities that was funding the Sons of the Harpy and everything.
Well, maybe, but she's not going to burn down Marine.
Probably not.
And if she burns down those other cities, she burns the slaves with them. And I don't think that's in her. I don't think that's her character.
Yeah.
I mean, it could happen in a way that I could say,
what do you think's going to happen
when
she brings the Dothraki over? We've seen what their invasion forces look like. It's not going to be pretty for Westeros.
Well, more importantly, in the short term, how fast is she? I guess. Well, we have the Ironborn and not Cersei. I'm stupid. Mother of Dragons lady. Whose name I've forgotten in the moments. Daenerys, thank you. They're on a collision course for Marine, so maybe the Dothraki won't be there for very long, but you do not want to have the Dothraki sitting still, waiting to do something for very long at all.
Yeah.
Those guys do not...
I imagine the casualty count on their ride across the Narrow Sea is going to be pretty big. They're going to be sitting there with horses and everybody else, and they're just going to be cranky because they hate being on boats in general. It's going to be a little bit sloppy.
Well, right, and they're not going to mix well with the other people in Marine, and there is already the people of Marine are not mixing well with each other. So if I'm Daenerys, I'm get on these boats. These people have boats. I will whatever help. You guys, you're great. I'm with you. Let's go, because these horse guys do not idle. Okay, They are forward all the time. Let's do that.
Sounds like Yara wants to be there whenever she gets there, so hopefully that can happen. I really want to see this season end with them actually crossing the Narrow Sea.
We know that Yara's into girls.
I know, I had that thought too.
She's gonna go see Daenerys. I assume. I mean,
Daenerys
in the Game of Thrones universe,
Daenerys seemed like she was okay with girls at one point. So who knows?
Yeah, she has. What's his name? Dario.
She has Dahario, but in the first season, she was asking how to actually please the call and everything, and the one girl was kind of getting frisky with her, and there was a little bit of an implied relationship there, even if they never showed it. So I don't necessarily
in the books. It's way more than implied, and I mean they don't it's not written out in explicit detail, but it's they banged.
Yeah,
with her handmaiden.
Yeah,
and
so. It could be the lesbian Viking dragon mothers taking over Westeros.
That would be interesting to see.
I can only imagine the shit post that'll be hitting Facebook for that.
Well, until then, you've been listening to the Human Echoes recap for Game of Thrones. You can get all of our other cool stuff at humanechoes.com, and you're on our YouTube channel. If you're watching this, the audio version of this video, you can click subscribe. That would be amazing. If you're already listening to the podcast, we have our regular podcast that goes up on Fridays. Next week, we're going to be covering a really interesting movie called Hong Kill Dong, which is a wuxia martial arts film. I I can't wait to talk about this movie, Tony. I'm legitimately excited. But that's next.
I am too.
You have to wait for that.
And if you guys if you're on YouTube and you want to listen to this like in your car or anything like that, if you subscribe to the Human Echoes podcast, which you can do through iTunes, Stitcher, pretty much anywhere where you can find podcasts.
And the Google Play Music app.
Yeah, Google Play Music,
if you're one of them
all that good stuff.
Android schlubs like me.
Get that directly to your phone so that you don't have to sit there at your computer. It's a good way to listen, and we really, really appreciate you guys checking this out. Thank you for listening to us talk about Game of Thrones and all sorts of other movies, and thank you for checking out humanechoes.com for more cool content.
We will see you next week for sure with our recap of No One.
All right.